my God, Marvel. Just when I think I'm out, you drag me back in. I had plans, you know. I had other things I wanted to talk about. And you might be asking yourself, what ruffled my comic book pages this time? None other than Dan frickin' Slott. Let's start off with the fact that he blocked me on Twitter. Yeah, that was a lovely thing that happened. I mean, I don't really... Well, I'll be honest. I care a little bit, but I care in a different way. The way of, hey, I can now add that to the many lists of people who've blocked me on Twitter, particularly comic book creators, because they're assholes, or because they don't like discussion, or just genuinely mean. Some of them. Not all of them. Some of them are just mean. We'll get to that in just a minute. But first things first, Amazing Spider-Man number 25 recently came out with an exorbitantly large price tag of $10. And I was like, wait, $10? That's a lot. That's a lot of money for just one comic book. I know that there's a lot of backup stories in it and whatnot, but I think Marvel just intentionally said, throw in as many stories as you possibly can so we can make that extra cash. And I'm like, no one... And when someone goes to a comic book store, they don't want to go and pick up a book for $10. That's insane. That's almost well over half the price of a trade. You could just as easily buy a trade of a book. My God. But another thing about that book that was incredibly stupid and that Dan himself wrote in the story, Spider-Man talks about if it's okay to punch Asian criminals. Yeah, that's a thing that we needed to discuss, Dan. Thank you for wasting a bunch of panels talking about if it's okay for Spider-Man, a superhero, to punch criminals in the face. Since when does their skin color or nationality matter? Last time I checked, a criminal is normally a criminal, and you have to normally fight criminals, and what superheroes normally do is punch said criminals. We don't need your identity politics in Spider-Man, Dan. Please do not do that. It makes you seem stupid. That's not going to be the focus of today's video. Today, we're going to be talking about an article on Bleeding Cool and how it makes Dan sound like a petulant child. You know, the kind of child that, stomps their feet and keeps on screaming and said, do it my way or not at all. Yeah, that kind of kid. That's what this article kind of makes him come off as. So, let's go over it. The title of the article is The Peter Parker Mary Jane Watson Marriage Will Never Ever Return Up to Infinity, says Dan Slott. Okay, for starters, why is it titled To Infinity? Dan, you are not... you can't tell the future, Dan. You don't know that. Stop pretending like you know everything, and you know the inherent future of Marvel indefinitely up to infinity, because you don't. But I get it. I understand. Maybe the marriage might not come back for decades and decades, but we don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. So let's get to the actual article itself. I'm going to start off with the first... This was a thread from another website, from Comic Book Resources, so links will be down in the description for this. And here's how Dan responded. Believe all you want, it ain't happening. I've told people this for 9 years. My pitch for Renew Your Vows and getting permission from the powers that be to do it, and it's selling well enough to merit an ongoing, is as good as you're going to get. And then talks about buying Jerry Conway's Spider-Man book. For starters, I have a question. If this has been going on for 9 years, why are you getting into debates about this? It it makes no sense to keep beating a dead horse. Let the fans do what they want. If the fans want to debate it, they want to discuss it, they want to talk about how they wish it would come back, that's fine. I'm sure that you get the comment all the time that they'd like the marriage back and whatnot. I get that, and that can be frustrating, Dan. I understand that. I feel your pain. But you don't need to berate them for wanting it. You could just move past it, ignore it, not talk about it. But you're the one who's talking about it, Dan. You are the one running your mouth. Let's move on. Let's see. Every single editorial team since the marriage worked hard to undo it. You will not see the marriage restored in the core continuity ever. Okay, if it's not coming back in the main core continuity, I do have one thought about this. Then why do we have the renew your vows to begin with? I mean, yeah, it's something for the fans who enjoyed the marriage and whatnot, and we get writers who write about it, but if it's not coming into the core continuity, why is that book even in existence? I'm a little confused about that. I wonder what someone's thoughts might be on that. Let me know. I'm gonna skip to this part. Over a quarter of a century has been spent by Marvel to undo it. The changes from 2007 is one where they put their collective foot down. It ain't happening. Sorry, ever. It's not a question of current writer or current editorial. Marvel wants it to stay undone. And then, talking about them being back in a relationship instead. Okay. Current writers and editorials change every once in a while. Joe Quesada was editor-in-chief at Marvel. Now he's not. He's the one who helped annul the marriage in the first place. It's a weird thing to say. I mean, I get it. Yeah, Marvel put their collective foot down, and they want it to stay this way. But it's a weird thing to say that it's never coming back, or it won't come back. Even if a bunch of editors or a bunch of writers decide, you know what, let's reinstate the marriage, or let's get them back together and get them to marry more organically and naturally. Saying that it's never going to happen, it's like, what are you doing? Are you trying to predict the future, Dan? Are you? Because I don't think you can do that. Last time I checked, you're just the fat dude who writes comic books. Not really meaning to insult your weight. I'm fat too, but at least I'm not trying to predict the future. Anyway, this isn't a let's argue about it or let's debate it. Well, it sounds more like you're arguing about it, Dan, than you're debating it. This is fact. This is in stone. This is a done deal. There's no administration in the near or distant future that will ever reinstate the marriage to the core continuity version of Spider-Man ever again. A lot of this talk and whatnot seems to be like a repeating of sentences and whatnot. And it's Dan because he abuses the caps locks button a lot in his in posts on the line and whatnot. He talks for a long time about like a big ticket for somebody who wants to be editor or the big CEO, whatever the case may be. He goes into that a lot. Now, the one thing I wanted to point out about this, Dan, is that you have sucked the literal soul out of Spider-Man. And it's been a slow, burning progression of dwindling sales and fluctuating sales and the character pretty much not even being people's favorite character. I'm included on that list. I don't like Spider-Man anymore. I hate Spider-Man. I think he's a terrible character now. It wasn't always this way, but it is now. Look, I say, let the fans have their discussions on the forums. Let them talk about it. Let them vote with their wallet. Let them decide what they want out of a Spider-Man book. And you continue to write about whatever it is you want to write about. Because the one thing that I'm noticing here is you're spending an awful lot of time on forums and on Twitter and on a bunch of other places complaining or arguing about a variety of things, whether they're Spider-Man related or not, when you could be using that focus and energy to actually write good comic books. I mean, come on, Dan. That's what you're hired to do. You're hired to write comics. Stop going into forums and debating about it. I mean, you can interact with the fans if you want, but do so respectfully, is all I would like to say about that. I can think of at least 3 specific things we could do in a book tomorrow, not MJ or marriage related, that would cause a boost in sales, and that we won't do. And no, I won't tell you what those are. Okay, Dan, if you have at least 3 things that you'd like to talk about, or specific things you could do with the book tomorrow, where are they? And I'm not just talking about boosting sales. Every time Marvel relaunches a #1, it boosts sales. I'm asking, where's the good story? Where's that nice punch, that nice, yeah, that was a good story, I liked it, I actually want to read that. 3 of them, Dan? You have 3 of them. Osborn Identity is not to a strong start, Clone Conspiracy was a mess, and I haven't read your Spider-Man book for years now. Also, if we want to talk about the marriage and whatnot, and how it might boost sales again, why did you do Renew Your Vows? Renew Your Vows boosted sales for Spider-Man, didn't it? I believe so. Last time I checked. And on the forum where you're talking, let's not forget that 5 years after you took over the book, Comic Book Resources had a poll that asked, how many people thought that One More Day was a mistake? An overwhelming majority, over 70%. Well, the other 40 not really, apparently okay with it. Now, also, it's still to this day debated and discussed. If it's been this long, and people want it back, the marriage back, or anything of that nature, how can you say that it's never going to happen? People are still mad about One More Day. People still talk about the marriage to this day. This isn't going to end, Dan. Your 2 options currently for you and Marvel is to either reinstate the marriage or reinstate some form of a relationship between the 2 characters, or not do that and continue to get flack for being assholes. Those are kind of the only 2 options I can see from my point of view. Now I'm going to read this part. This part actually got me a little miffed and a little pissed. Someday I wish the MJ marriage fans could understand the amount of water I had to carry and the political minefields I had to dance through to get Renew Your Vows to happen. That was a long shot, and that was in an alternate reality. You're never getting that close again. And by the way, you're welcome. Talk about being goddamn arrogant, Dan. Come on. You're going to be arrogant about it? Look. Even if it's in an alternate reality, the marriage sells. People like it. People like the relationship. Even if it was a publicity stunt, let's keep in mind that almost everything a comic book company does is a publicity stunt. Everything from DC Rebirth to Civil War II, every major event that Marvel publishes, which I will get into another time, this is all publicity stunts. A good majority of the time. But the question always is it going to be good? Superman was married to Lois Lane for years. It was a publicity stunt, but there was a build-up to it, and the characters really like each other, and it worked. Spider-Man, though the powers that be at Marvel tried so hard for so long to get rid of it, a lot of the fans gravitated towards it. My first Spider-Man comic was when they were married. And I was like maybe 13, 14 years old when I bought that book, or maybe even younger. Don't go saying that not only will the marriage never happen, or say that, oh, it was so hard to get it back. Marvel only understands one language, and that's the sound of money. They're going to do whatever it takes to get money. Even if it's a bad idea, they want money. That's pretty much all I got to say about it. Now, this particular part of the post really seemed kind of mean to me. I'm going to read it. The marriage will never be reinstated in the core continuity. I'm on 9 years of breaking the news to a certain segment of which, judging by your avatar and endless posts you are part of, this is a lock. There are no people in charge. Someday that will bring about your dearest, fondest, Spidey wish. It ain't happening. I could spend hours breaking down for you all the magical dream scenarios you could have and crush them one by one. It ain't happening ever! Dan, don't be an asshole. I don't care what someone might say or do. This reflects very poorly on you and on Marvel when you act like an asshole, when you act like a child. You don't even need to be on this forum. You don't. But I think you like the attention. Actually, I know you like the attention. I know you like stalking people. I know you look for your name because you're a narcissistic asshole. You stalked so many different people and complained about all the problems. You are a problem for Spider-Man and for Marvel. I'm amazed that Marvel doesn't restrict your access to talking on forums and whatnot, because a lot of the core fan bases of the comic books follow you on Twitter. They are on comic book forums. And when they see you act like this, it doesn't endear you to them at all. It makes them hate you even more. Please do not do that. You need to calm down and not waste your time. Focus on your storytelling, focus on your writing, or focus on something else. Do not berate the fans for wanting something. They always have, their fan fictions, or they have the Renew Your Vows book. Let them be. You don't have to do this every single year, which is something that you talk about, doing it every year. Stop doing it every year. The more you talk about it, the more those fans are going to continue to fight back about it. Stop it. At the end of his little tirade, he says, there is no time that it will ever happen, ever. I'll be back to remind you of this next year as well, so you continue to charge at this windmill yet again. It ain't happening. Oh, so the fans are Don Quixote at this point? No, Dan, you are an asshole. They do not care. Well, actually, they do care. Let me rephrase. The fact that you want to come back again and do this again makes you sound like an idiot. Certain things are, discussed and debated on comic book forums and on Twitter all the time. But, there are certain creators and writers who, inevitably drop it. They don't bring it up again. They may answer some fans' questions here and there, but I don't think that they go to this level of irritation. Oh, next year. Are you kidding me? My God. If I was people on the forums, which I'm not, I normally don't go on forums very often, but if I was on forums and you were there all the time doing it every single bloody year, I'd probably get very pissed. No wonder a lot of the fans don't like you. And let's not also forget, you're the one doing this. You could just leave it alone. Not touch it. Have a hands-off approach, not a hands-on approach. I have to say, guys, that Dan is... he's probably my least favorite creator at Marvel next to Nick Spencer. I really do not like him in many, many ways on a personal level. And I know that some people say he's a nice guy, when you meet him at a con or something of that nature. And maybe he is nice. I couldn't tell you, but from what I've seen, or at the very least, he has this kind of split down the middle. When he's at a con, he wears his happy face. He's wearing a mask, if you will. Whereas when he's online, he is a he stalks people, he's a bully, and he acts like an entitled child. It's an insane level of stupidity. I don't know which is the real person and which one isn't, to be honest. Personally, I think that this part of him is the real Dan Slott. Because the internet and whatnot, anonymity and whatnot, people can act a bit more brave when they're not in person. But I would like to know what you guys think about this. I'd like a discussion in my comment section. What do you think about Dan Slott as a person? Or has he ever mistreated you and whatnot? Has he blocked you on Twitter? Has he done things that piss you off and whatnot? Now, if Dan does see this video, which there is a very strong possibility he will, because he seems to like following certain things and whatnot, please, Dan, feel free. Feel free to comment. Feel free to respond to me if you wish. If you got the stones for it, I'm more than happy to respond back. And keep in mind, Dan, the fans are paying attention. They're watching. They always are. You should be more careful. Anyway, guys, thank you for this. Thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this little discussion, or not really a discussion, but this random video, this rant. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Yay! Do all those things. And as always, do not forget to raise your nerd flags high, and I will see you next time. Nightwolf's out.